Well, that sucked. Oh, it's just on fire now. Man, I should really screw this thing down. I found some nice looking feet. Alright, let me rephrase that. That's me winking under the helmet. There's water everywhere. Hello everybody, this is Tyler from Tcustoms, and today I'm going to show you how I built a vacuum forwarding machine. Now, like most builds on this channel, I wanted to be my best work, so I started off by cutting every corner and making this build as cheap as possible. So I went through my scrap collection and found a couple of awful looking boards. It's all I got, so it'll have to do. I measured out the cuts I was about to make, being sure to double check my measurements as we don't have much room for error. Or I should say that we don't have enough scrap to recut this if shit really hits the fan. Now, not to sound like an arrogant asshole or anything, but I am absolutely cracked at using a jigsaw. I redid my entire kitchen backsplash with this tool alone, and I must say it looks, ooh, fantastic. So this should be no problem, easy peasy, a piece of cake, as if we were walking on Easy Street. I began to cut and well, that sucked. Clearly, it was the metal straight edge keeping me from cutting straight, so I'll try again without it. Now, that was clearly on the tool and not a skill issue, so I bought this mini circular saw from Amazon. I would have got one used from Facebook Marketplace, but I'm
Introducing the Dull-Man Circular Saw with adjustable cutting guide, removable handle, and cutting-edge laser line tracking system. Forget your flimsy jigsaws of the past, this is a man's tool. Hell yeah!
While it might seem a bit gimmicky at first, laser guide actually does help quite a bit, but more importantly, it looks sick on camera. If anyone knows why I'm getting all this blowout, please let me know. Now, I'm not sponsored in any way by Doveman, so I could blame my awful cuts in the tool and not my skills. I'm going to use the palm sander to help make the edges square and help remove some of the blowout. With the main sheets of plywood out of the way, I'm going to move on to the 2x4s. This whole build was designed to fit a 12x12 sheets of plastic, which is why a lot of dimensions are 12 inches. If you want the files for this build, they'll be in the description below. While you're down there, how about you hit the subscribe button? Come on, man, just one little hit? No? Alright. Probably should have clamped that the other way around. I cut down, I'm going to use some wood screws to fasten it all together. I like to get the screws started somewhere more comfortable, then put the whole thing in place. Now, with most screws, you would need to drill a pilot hole first, as, you know, not to split the wood. But these ones always seem to... I don't want to talk about it. With that mounted, I can drill the main vacuum hole.
That don't work.
Well, that sucked. It's even worse on the back. I'll do my best to finish this off. Wow, that's real bad. Well, that's a problem for future me to solve. I made a whole transfer jig which fits the vacuum adapter I 3D printed. I bought these brass threaded inserts, which I've always wanted to try. Using an old soldering iron, I heated them up and pushed them into place. Not to be that guy or anything, but the whole process was super satisfying. The holes I drilled didn't exactly fit the first time around, so I decided to size them up a bit, which took more than a couple of tries. Now time to fix this thing. I'm just going to use some basic wood filler here to help level everything out. Odds are using this amount of wood filler is going to take forever to dry, but I'm out of ideas at this point. In the meantime, I'll disassemble this box and drill the holes for the vacuum to pass through. I'm afraid this will be a little thin, so I'll move the circle down using the paint can as a guide. After making a sad attempt to clean up this horrible cut, I brought it back to the bandsaw, which made it look much better, I guess. Next up is the Plinth, which is pretty much a hollow box with a bunch of holes in it. Just think of it as if I were making an air hockey table, only instead of blowing it would suck, and the quality is dookie. Now that I have all these lines, the saw I got isn't exactly good for cutting out the square, and the bandsaw is too small, so... Maybe the tool isn't the problem after all. We spend all this time trying to get the best new thing when the original doesn't seem to work, to find out that the only issue was our skills all along. Maybe next time I should rush less, practice more, and be less hasty before condemning a tool. Maybe this is more of an issue with our current society as a whole, always throwing things away when they don't seem to work, or we're simply tired of them. It seems like modern media is embracing the fact that we After that job was finished, I needed to find a way to radius these edges. So I'll grab my Dremel sanding drum and... well, that didn't work. That was somehow worse. Oh, it's just on fire now. Oh yeah, perfect. This next step would be a perfect opportunity to use a CNC machine of some kind. Damn. So instead, I'll just crisp fix it and use some basic hand tools. I'll start off by grading out the whole surface. Then I'll take my center punch and punch every point. Once that's done, I can finally drill every single hole, which shouldn't take too long, right? Right? Now I want to protect the wooden surface of the vacuum former, so I'm going to be using some aluminum tape to reinforce the surface. Not too sure on how much this will actually do, but worst case I'll just rip it off. To make this box as airtight as possible, I'm going to put down some caulk to prevent the leaks. I don't exactly have a good way of putting caulk onto the bottom edge of the box, so I'm going to make an EVA foam gasket instead. This will prevent leaks and make it so that the entire machine is disassemblable. Not too sure why I would need to take it apart, this section, but you get the idea. I found some of this really old paint underneath my staircase and decided to paint the entire plate in navy blue. This will help protect the wood and it makes it look a little better too. That's right, I can secure the gasket using spray glue. And put a couple plates on top while it dries. Using the hole jig as a guide, I cut a space in the gasket so that air can pass through. With everything roughly flattened out, I can make a quick gasket for the vacuum adapter. And secure it into place. I'm securing the plate in from the bottom because I don't want any of the screw marks going to the final post. I'm using EVA foam as a little risers to keep the base in place. With that part done, we can now move on to the plastic holder thing. I'm using some 3/4 inch by 1/2 inch angle aluminum from Lowe's. I'll mark it the size and cut it using my old hacksaw. Beautiful transition. This third one's a little long, so we'll give it a haircut and that's weird. Man, I should really screw this thing down. Now these pieces have to slot together to form a perfectly flush square. I bought some brackets to hold the corners together, and I'm going to cut some channels into each extrusion. That way it can all just fit together. After using the bandsaw for a while, I noticed that it progressively got more and more shaky. If anyone knows how to fix this, please let me know. So I'll just finish this one by hand. With all the pieces manufactured, I can bring it over to this more level table and assemble everything. With this piece done, I can look at last week's community post, and it seems that I'm missing a couple of holes on the top right. So I'll just use the drill press and file to make it match. There we go, much more better. I then made one more off camera, and the plating of the machine is beginning to take shape. Now, most people use their ovens to melt the plastic, but I want something more contained. That way everything can stay in my shop. Also, my mom said no. However, most contained vacuum formers have the heater on top, which is a very inefficient way of heating the plastic because heat rises and the plastic is below it. Having the heating element below the plastic allows for a more even heating and makes the whole thing a hell of a lot cheaper, as the entire heating system just cost me $14.02 from Amazon. The heating system itself is only comprised of this cheap induction cooktop, which outputs a lot of heat and smoke for its size. I'll put the fan on to deal with the fumes. Now I'll measure roughly how high I want the plastic to sit off the heater and get to cutting. If you're wondering why I'm not using the laser for these cuts, it's because it's already dead. The main heating box is going to be made out of wood, which is, known for burning. So I'm going to insulate everything with aluminum tape and foil. This will help contain the heat, protect the wood, and evenly funnel the heat towards the plastic. I'm going to try to use some tape to hold everything together while I drill. That went well. Yeah, clamps are a lot better than tape. This time I learned from my mistakes, drilled pilot holes, didn't split the wood or make any mistakes at all. I found some nice looking feet. Alright, let me rephrase that. I found some felt pads I'm going to use to make the whole thing feel fancy. With that, this build is finished. Now I'll just test it out, and it's a little loose. Okay, I'll put some height adjustment screws in and adjust it a little, and now it's finished. Time for the first ever pull. I got two 3D printed bucks, one coated in XTC 3D and the other plain. I have this sci-fi wooden piece I sculpted with a bandsaw, and one of the holes is drilled all the way through and the other isn't. And a wrench, because why not? I have the vacuum going to this outlet and the heater going to this one, which are both on different circuits and shouldn't trip a breaker. Probably. I'm using thin PETG sheets I bought on Amazon to do these first pulls. I have three very strong clamps holding this thing together, along with this little guy to hold the plastic in place, which should be enough. Now, it's time to turn on the heater and let the magic happen. Once it was ready, I turned off the burner, turned on the vacuum, and attempted my first ever pull. which seemed to go fairly well. The one with XTC seemed to stick a lot more. I threw some spray primer on the back to help reveal all the details, and it seemed to turn out pretty well. But I feel it could be improved slightly, so I'm adding an EVA foam gasket around the edge, which should help with the seal. Which somehow it seemed to seal worse, so I'll try again, but take my time to line it up. Not only did I take too long to line up the plastic, but the 3 clamps also failed. So I'll just quickly throw on some wooden stabilizing poles using double-sided tape. Odds are this will be temporary, and they'll go back with some screws if this works. It's not like it's going to stay this way forever. With that done, I'll use a buck from an upcoming video. That's me winking under the helmet. To try again. Now, to combat the clamping issue, I decided to properly re-engineer the entire plastic holding system. Just kidding, I just bought a ton more clamps. Let's try something a bit more ambitious. I have some thick 1/8 inch ABS plastic sheets, which are a lot thicker when compared to the 0.02 PETG sheets I've been using. As for the buck, I got just the thing. This is an old project, and odds are I'll never come back to finishing it. It has a coat of XTC 3D, so I'm not worried about it melting too much. And just as recording this segment, the basement decided to flood. Which didn't really affect much, but I'll set up a couple of fans and dehumidifiers and we'll be good. I'll use the new clamps on top of the extrusion rather than on the bolts. This should give much more even pressure on the plastic. Once those are all on, I'll make sure everything fits and start the heating process. Now, I know that I have my 3D printer running, along with a dehumidifier, a couple of fans, and this cooktop all running off one circuit, and I was a bit hesitant to do this pull, but I ain't no pussy, and I'm vacuum forming anyway, and nothing's gonna stop me. Once I had the power back and stopped all other electronic devices, I retried this pole. The plastic itself seems to be taking forever to melt. It is developing a weird bumpy texture on the bottom. It's fine. The plastic's ready, so let's try this thing out. Well, that sucked. Looks like the plastic was not warm enough and burnt on the bottom, but the mold released just fine and there was no real damage to the buck. Let's try something a little easier like EVA foam. I put the machine on a high, medium heat, that way the foam heats evenly. At first the foam raised up like normal, but then it began to tighten up like a drum. It's not getting any more flexible, so I guess I'll just pull it right now. Well, that sucked. Again. Maybe this buck's a little too ambitious for a small 12 by 12 vacuum former. I'll try something a little more simple on EVA foam, like a weight. Not too bad. There's no good way for air to pass through the valley of the weight, so we didn't pick up any of the detail. This could be fixed by adding a couple of holes to the weight itself to help draw air in. The weight is also made of metal, which is acting as a heat sink, drawing all the heat away from the foam, giving less time to take shape. Now, even though most of these poles didn't turn out perfectly, I learned a lot about the vacuum forming process and hope with a little more practice, I can get better in the future. If only there was a good resource I could have used to learn more about vacuum forming before all this.
Bring this down over top, and then we'll pull the vacuum. Oh, look at that! Look at all that detail. Oh, super cool.